It's an At the Office edition of the East Bank Sports Show, serving up the hottest sports takes from right here in Cleveland, Ohio. It's your hosts, Noah, John, and Erik.
Welcome, everyone, to The Office, the podcast where we talk all things sports. I'm your host, Noah, here with my co-hosts, John and Erik. Join the conversation. Send us a chat on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or text the show, 216-250-1411. That's 216-250-1411. John, Erik, boys, how we doing?
Feeling good, brother. Gardo's got a good win last night. I'm excited for football season. My draft is next week. I'm living the life. It feels great outside. It feels like fall. It's almost football time.
You didn't see the score of tonight's game so far yet, have you?
Not gonna let it ruin it. No, I did.
Okay, I wouldn't go look at that while we're on the show unless you're trying to be cynical like my man Erik. Speaking of Erik, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Listen, nothing's taken away from that win last night, though. In the words of the Moneyball movie, how can you not love baseball?
I am completely with you, my man. Gentlemen, we have a loaded show tonight. We have a bunch of topics I really want to get into. I'm really excited to be back here. I want to point out my new background real quick. You can't really see it. I'm going to turn. I'm all the way in the way. But we have actual motion on the background for people who watch with the video. Send us a text, number down below. Let's get into 30-second takes, gentlemen. Are you both ready?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
All right, 30-second takes. Favorite Ohio State Buckeye of all time. Open-ended, excited for college football. John, 30 seconds on the clock. Ready?
I am.
Go.
So this was tough because there's a million to choose from. I went with the people who ushered in the new era of Ohio State football. We've always had a great program, but it started for me with Tress when we won the first national championship against Miami. When I think about the linchpin of that team, my answer is surprisingly probably Maurice Clarett. Not only because he meant so much to that game, so much to the program, and so much in the era, but his redemption story and his bounce back from near-death experiences and catastrophes make him my number one choice.
I think that's a great choice. Erik, you ready?
Let's do it.
30 seconds on the clock. Go.
I'm not even going to say my prepared remarks because I had the exact same answer as John. Listen, I know that part of the Clarett story is sad, but he did bring us a natty, and watching him play was like seeing poetry unfold on the field. I mean, if you watched him, he was absolutely insane, and I don't think people have an appreciation for that, but my answer was the exact same as John's.
I love it. I know it's
Erik.
Before both of your time, but Eddie George was really, really good too. He was close.
Well, so was Archie Griffin, but
True.
I had to keep it in the time frame that I watched.
Erik, you want to go ahead, since you now have producer tools, you want to go ahead and time me and set me up on this and be quasi-host for about 10 seconds here?
Oh, do I? Do I want to mute this guy? All right. You ready, Noah?
I'm so ready. Favorite Ohio State Buckeye of all time. Talking to the younger guy out of the three of us. First guy that comes to mind, JT Barrett, quarterback, overhated for no reason. Loved watching him play. He was stats away from being one of the better to best to greatest of all time Big Ten quarterbacks. Broke Drew Brees records for total yards and touchdowns. He was a national champion, Kellen Moore Award, third team All-American, Big Ten Most Valuable Player of the Year, three-time Big Ten Quarterback of the Year. I knew you were hovering it too. I was trying to put as many of those accolades in
He's
before I
going to
wrapped
feel it
it
no
up.
matter what you did.
I
It's
know.
interesting. The
I was
JT
ready.
Barrett stuff is interesting because I feel like there's a two-edged sword when you pick players who break records, because if you break records in college, it means you played 4 years. And if you play 4 years, 9 times out of 10, it means you weren't quite there yet to get drafted. There were probably some more talented guys, but I can't argue. No shade. JT Barrett was the man.
The thing
Yeah.
is, though, he did get so much shade. He got unbelievable amounts of hate. And I know it's, 12 gauge came in and did his thing, so it kind of takes away from his reputation a little bit. But JT was unbelievable. I never got the hate that he got in Columbus. I'm not even talking outside of Columbus.
Yeah, I've never got it either. I was always kind of a fan. Obviously, I love Cardell. It was great. That run was great. Don't get me wrong, especially because he was a Cleveland guy and everything. But JT to me was everything we needed out of a quarterback at that time frame with Urban Meyer's offense and everything that we had going on. It's unfortunate he gets hurt, and then you have all this quarterback controversy. He could have been the quarterback to win a natty, but I digress.
Yeah.
Well, we should have won back to back, frankly. I mean, first of all, if not for that flip-flopping between the two to start that season, that was awful. And then we definitely deserved to go to that playoff instead of, I think it was Michigan State that got in ahead of us. We would have won again, no question in
Right.
my mind.
I
Right.
honestly think that the best Buckeyes team of my lifetime was that team with everybody back that didn't make it even to the playoff or to the championship game. Maurice Claret,
Zeke.
Ezekiel Elliott. That team was loaded. Look at the pros that came off of that team. And because Michigan State, I don't know what Urban Meyer was doing. Awful play calling. It's raining, so let's throw the ball 70 times. But yeah, I think that might be the best Buckeyes team that we've seen in my life, and they didn't even play for a national championship.
Yeah, I am with both of you. Gentlemen, we have a main topic to get into that has been on our list of topics for quite some time now. It is, in fact, the last topic on our list that we created when we first started officially doing the show weekly together. The question is, in all of history, past, present, I can't say future, all of history, I don't know where I was going with that. Which pitcher do you want starting Game 7? And I'm just going to put it this way because we're all Guardians fans. For your Cleveland Guardians, you can pick up any pitcher to pitch that Game 7 that they will play in this year for the World Series. Who do you want to pitch it and why? John, go ahead and start us off.
Sure thing. So baseball is a funny sport because they've been playing it since the 1800s. And unlike football, where it was just a mess and a very different game, baseball is pretty much the same sport. So you get into this thing where you compare eras. The other thing that's kind of unique is that I think in football, the pros of today would dominate the pros of 30 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. But in baseball, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think Cy Young would be a very, very effective and really good starting pitcher today. Because those guys still threw hard. I mean, some of the hitters are better. But anyway, let me get to the point, right? So I broke it up into eras. Dead ball, which is before 1920-ish, depending on who you ask. Post-dead ball, like pre-modern era, which is like 1920 until modern history that most of us remember, like 1965, 1970. And then the modern era, right? People we either saw play or know very well of them, even if we didn't see them play. Dead ball era, I got to go with Cy Young. They named the Cy Young Award after Cy Young for a reason. The mound being only 55 feet away and flat was weird, but like it's called the Cy Young Award for a reason. So you could debate me on that if you want. Moving forward from like the 20s to the 60s, I had a hard time because we got into some of the Negro League records and stuff on a previous podcast, and I got to go with Satchel Paige. I mean, you look at what he did in pro and think that he was like in his 30s and already on the downside of his career, and he was still playing so well in the MLB. Satchel Paige in the KC Monarchs is putting up numbers like we've never seen, and I think had he had the opportunity to pitch in the pros, they would have been as good or better. Moving to the modern era, though, that's where it gets juicy, right? It's all the people we remember, and I want to give a big round of shout-outs to CC Sabathia. I still have his jersey in the closet. He's one of my favorite Indians of all time. Dwight Gooden, Greg Maddux, Roy Halladay made the top cut, but the final cut was like Justin Verlander, Nolan Ryan, Roger Clemens, Randy Johnson. The one guy who I think in his prime is best, if you had him on his best day of his best year, the guy who's just most lights out, if I had to win a Game 7 tomorrow, give me Pedro Martinez on the bump, and whoever is whatever lineup from whatever era, I have a feeling he's going to get through him with some efficiency. Shout out to Corey Kluber. Of all the people who have played for the Indians and Guardians in my life, I think he's probably the one I'd want in a Game 7 of the people who are on our roster. But prime Pedro in a Game 7, polish the trophy and wheel it in the locker room, man. He is not going to let you down.
Kluber or Cliff Lee?
I go Kluber over Cliff Lee, but I love Cliff Lee too. I said CC also. I mean, CC's probably my favorite of all of them, but Kluber at his best, I think, was better than CC. CC was just at his best for a lot longer.
Was Pedro on that 2004 championship team
for the Red Sox?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Isn't that when he took what was the Don Zimmer, the bald guy, and threw him down when they were playing the Yankees? I think that was earlier that year.
I'm not sure.
I'll have to check that, but I think
you might be right, but
yeah, but he was nasty in Montreal, and don't even get me into the whole that the Indians probably should have had Pedro and a deal fell through. That's another topic for another podcast, but he was very, very close for like Richie Sexson and Brian Giles to being a Cleveland Indian.
Yeah.
But we'll come back to that later. I'm going to go with Pedro. I'm going to go with Pedro with Game 7 on the line.
Erik, take it away, man.
Interesting pick. Not where I thought you would take that. You did name a few names that I agree with that should be in the conversation. I didn't really look back into the dead ball era or anything like that. I took it more as a modern question, although I do appreciate that. A couple honorable mentions, no particular order. I don't think you mentioned Sandy Koufax somehow. I don't think you mentioned Bob Gibson somehow. They both threw a bunch of shutouts.
Tim Lyons with the fact check real quick that Pedro was on that 2004 World Series team. So
thank you, Tim. I'm surprised at that a little bit. You did mention Randy Johnson, who was simply incredible. I think people forget that he took an underdog Diamondbacks team all the way. Not just taking them all the way, but he won 3 of the 7 World Series games. He started and won 3 of 7. Noah, I know you're too young for him, but there's a reason they called him the big unit. He was insane. Also a guy you wouldn't want to get in a fight with. One more honorable mention, and I know it wasn't World Series, but Curt Schilling and the Bloody Sock. I know that was the ALCS, but it's that kind of grit that I'm looking for a starting Game 7 pitcher. So I wanted to shout him out. All of that said, though, the thing that shocked me the most, John, is that you didn't mention who I put as number 1, who I would pick, and that is Madison Bumgarner. First of all, the guy won 3 World Series with the Giants. But not only did he put up insane numbers, he had a 0.43 ERA, he had a 0.48 whip, 17 Ks in 21 innings, but he came out to close Game 7 on 2 days rest. With him, the Giants don't have at least one of those 3 rings. But for me, watching live, I'll never forget those performances from Bumgarner. I remember thinking back in the day, like, man, I wish we had a guy like this. He is the guy that I would hand the ball to. When you say on his best day, Game 7, I mean, he went out there and won it for them almost single-handedly. And not to mention, I don't have the stats in front of me, but from what I recall, he was hitting home runs and shit too. The guy was just, I mean, he was insane, and brought them those rings.
I will say I didn't do a comprehensive list. All the guys you listed are great. We left out a lot of them. I thought about Madison Bumgarner because he had some really good performances, but like overall, the dude's ERA was like 3.5, right? Like he was good, but he wasn't great. He was just good when we remember it. Pedro Martinez pitched in the middle of the steroid era and had an ERA of 2.2. His whip was below 1. Opponent batting average 196, and his record was 118-36. Between 1997 and 2003, in the steroid era, he was untouchable.
Listen, if I'm picking a guy to go out and have a fight for me, I'm picking Pedro number 1 every single time. Game 7, he just doesn't get the ball for me.
Fair enough. Who you think, Noah?
Yeah, I'm ready to jump into this one because I kind of had a feeling that you guys were going to go the route of talking about some of the all-time greats, right? So I wanted to look back and look at, some of the Cleveland greats. You know what I mean? I wanted to look at the Cleveland great. So, of course, I put Cy Young in there as a thought process at first because he did pitch for the Indians at the time. I think it was the Indians. It might have been the Spiders at that point. I'm not even sure. Yeah. Regardless, I was going to pick Cy Young as just the cop-out answer because the award's named after him. But then I thought of another Indian Guardian great that you just can't not mention, right? and that's Bob Feller.
It was the Spiders.
Was it the Spiders? That's crazy. Bob Feller to me, if I want to go through some statistics real quick, his overall career WAR, the stat that basically tells you how great you were in your career, he was a 63.4 for his time period. He had 266 wins on the mound, 162 losses, and a career ERA of 3.25. If I'm putting myself in the shoes of wanting to go out there and watch, a Guardian go win the World Series for us, I'm thinking it's got to be a Guardian. First of all, not just some guy we pick up. Yes, of course, I would love to pick up all of the pitchers that you guys have already named, but put Bob Feller out there in his prime and let him bring us to that World Series. And that was kind of how I took it.
Anybody who sacrifices time on the mound to go fight a war for his country gets a salute and a nod in my book. I mean, Bob Feller was a badass, no doubt about it.
I was going to mention that too, and it completely slipped my mind that he was also he served in the military during what could have been some peak time in his MLB career.
Oh, the peak. Like he was at his
best. Was
best.
it the peak officially?
Yeah, like 2 years he missed. I got to give a shout out and then a one pet peeve of mine. Shout out to Noah for coming up with somebody before 2005. Bravo, well done, did your homework. And then just a pet peeve of mine. It's not just on our show, it's everywhere in sports. But people say, who's the best of all time? And the first thing they say is, well, I wasn't around in the 20s and I don't remember the 50s. And it becomes who's the best in your lifetime anyway. Let's not do a disservice. I mean, there were some ballers, especially in baseball, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And just because they didn't pitch at a time where we could watch them doesn't mean they shouldn't be on the list.
Absolutely, but it's tough because it's hard to compare eras. It's like comparing basketball eras. We're doing ourselves a disfavor when some of these players, we don't have game footage. There's literally nothing to go by except for stats. When it was an era where, people were coming off the farm to play. They weren't bred for major league sports. So
no, they were ripping cigs and drinking beer in the clubhouse.
Exactly. I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, I think it's easy to make modern comparisons just because we know what it takes to be. I mean, we don't, but we know what it takes to be a major league baseball player or major sports player. Back then, you could work at the whatever plant and then go play some baseball on the side. It's tough.
Yeah. I do, but okay. What about the middle ground? Because I'm also thinking, would you rather have Madison Bumgarner than Nolan Ryan? Like you said something about a bunch of strikeouts. I mean, this dude threw like a 50 trillion no hitters. I don't know. Baseball is a fun one because you could debate this all day. There's no bad answer. It's not like Madison Bumgarner is a bad pick. He's definitely in my top 25. He's just not number one.
Yeah, like you said, you could take every single team in the MLB and probably take somebody, and it would be a legitimate answer. Your answer earlier of what's Kluber for the Indians, that's not a bad pick at all.
Right.
I always felt that Kluber kind of fell apart a little bit in the postseason compared to regular season, but in that World Series run, he was unbelievable. He went out, did his thing. He was Klubot, which we all love. And we were a drone finger away from a World Series championship, so we won't put Trevor Bauer up there.
I was at
fair enough.
ALCS game 1 against the Blue Jays the year we went to the World Series, and we had, I forget the 3 pitchers at the back of our bullpen, where we basically said the starters just get a 6, and then we got a guy 7, 8, 9 who you can't hit. One of them was Miller. I can't remember the other 2, but Corey Kluber got the pearl for game 1. Went 6 innings, gave up no runs. We gave up no runs in the 7th, 8th, or 9th. Frankie Lindor hit a solo shot. We won 1-0. And I remember thinking, pitching as a staff cannot be better than this. This is the ALCS. We're playing the Blue Jays. So it's just one game, but it's just a fun. It's the best pitching performance I've probably ever been at.
Let me ask you this, guys, and this is an answer, me and Eric were kind of talking about at the actual office earlier today. So I'm curious what you have to say. What about a modern, two-way great like Shohei Ohtani, because you're picking that to pitch your game 7, but you're also getting obviously the batting that comes with a guy like Shohei Ohtani.
Shohei's 1-of-1, but I mean, CC Sabathia hit bombs when they started interleague play. Had he been in the National League, I think he would have been a threat at the plate. I think of it as a different question, though, because the question is, who do you want on the mound to win you a game 7? Not who do you want in the box or who's the best athlete. It's a little bit like,
yeah,
and he's unproven.
It's the same question. Nobody said Shohei Ohtani tonight.
I mean, yeah,
right.
Ohtani is completely an unproven entity when it comes to the postseason. And I did name a two-way player. Thank you very much. I mean,
No,
Bumgarner was that
I know,
guy.
yeah.
But yeah, I think unless you have a playoff, let alone World Series record, I just don't think you can pick a guy like that. I think Shohei is unbelievable and one of the best talents in modern baseball. But the man has to prove himself still.
Yeah. I agree with you, gentlemen. I'm gonna cut us. Oh, you got something else?
Just the only name that didn't come up from any of us, and I meant to and didn't, so that's on me. Nobody said Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw at his best is a nasty motherfucker. Like that guy was tall.
I actually mentioned him to Noah in the office. It's funny.
Did.
My 3 were Bumgarner, Kershaw, and Verlander.
Okay. Yeah.
Those were like my top modern 3 guys. But correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just going based on memory. Weren't there a few times that Kershaw completely fell apart? Didn't he give up like 6 runs or something like that in one of those playoff runs?
Probably.
That's what
they all did. I mean, everybody got. I mean, hell, the Indians were up 3-1 in the World Series, and we had 3 pitchers who we said one of these guys can win a game, and then they lost 3. Like sometimes shit just happens, but
that's fair.
Yeah,
fair. Gentlemen, I'm gonna cut us to commercial break. Go pay some bills real quick. When we come back, we have some other topics to talk about that could be fun. You know, we're getting into football a little bit now. Obviously, we got to show our love to baseball. It's still baseball season, but you know your boy's excited for some football. So wanted to talk about that. We'll be right back with the At the Office edition of the East Bank Sports Show. We'll be right back. And we are back with the At the Office edition of the East Bank Sports Show. Gentlemen, real quick before we get into it, I do want to just give a shout out to Fans First Sports Network and the Fanatical Elves, who help us with a plethora of things, whether that be distributing our podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts at, whether that be hosting our live streams. Just want to shout them out. And I want to shout out real quick too, we do have a merch store for the Fanatical Elves with At the Office merch. John does in fact have a t-shirt and a sticker. I have a sticker and my t-shirt did not fit, so I gave it to my girlfriend, got a refund, flipped the blanks, so we got some better blanks on the website now too. But yeah, I wanted to shoot that out real quick, show out real quick too, to text us 216-250-1411, and maybe you could be featured in a future or the current episode of At the Office. Gentlemen, I was thinking about topics this weekend when I was prepping for the show, and I thought this one could be a little bit of an interesting one. So I wanted to ask the open-ended question of, do you agree with how college football scheduling works? Now, I can give some more background. John, you asked the question, so if you want to explain it maybe of how we broke this down, I'm going to pitch it off to you actually, but let's get into it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I actually was asking more about what how deep it goes and like which direction we wanted to take it, but I think it boils down to the fact that, right, like Ohio State is a juggernaut, but they always start off playing like Marshall and San Diego State, and now we have super conferences. So when they go to create the schedule, do they go about it the right way? Right, like it's rivalry weekend or the weekend before rivalry weekend, and Alabama's revving up to play Auburn, and they're playing like Arkansas State, and it's like, wait a minute, what? Like this is week 11 or 13, or so. I think it has. Yeah, I mean, it's. Do you like the way they go about it? Love to hear what you think.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump into it first because, what made me think of this is because I've been planning to go to an Ohio State game this year. It's my first time going since I was in elementary school, I think. I think I was in 4th or 5th grade is the only time I've actually been in the Horseshoe 4 game. And I was looking at the schedule and I was thinking, man, there is a lot of home games this year. In fact, we only play on the road 4 times in the regular season of college football. And to me, that just doesn't sit well with me. I feel like it should be more balanced. Now, I understand there can be some off balance to this, maybe a 5. But 4 games on the road, when you're playing 8 total games at home, and you're talking about some of these home games being Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall. And I'm not dissing any of these programs by any means, but it's Ohio State we're talking about, right? To me, my biggest gripe with Division I college football for years has been how up until like mid-October, all I have to do on Saturday is watch the first half if I really wanted to. And I could be content because we're going to blow all of these teams, for the most part, all of these teams out. That's kind of what made me think about this. So no, I wish there was more, way more of a balance to when it comes to scheduling college football games, whether it be home and away games and whether that be, strength of competition. Now, am I the mastermind to figure out how you're going to do that? No, but I would like to see more balance in the schedule, especially with a 12-team college football playoff on the horizon for this season. But I'll open it up to you guys to give me your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I think you're missing a couple of points here. First, I like it because without this, we would have never seen the absolute beauty of a game in the 8th wonder of the world, which was Appalachian State beating Michigan.
That's true too.
I mean, that goes down in the history books of something that can never go away, which I love. But part of this scheduling and what we do when we play these smaller schools, Ohio State pays these schools, and those dollars go towards keeping those smaller programs alive. So when we play Akron, for example, we're paying Akron to come to Ohio State to, frankly, get their ass beat. And that money directly finances the football program itself and keeps that football program running and the lights on. That said, I'm very split on big games early because as much as I like watching them, I don't like the possibility of losing them. And it sounds silly. If you're in Ohio State, you should be ready, right?
I hate the word soft.
Let me finish.
That's soft to me. Okay, go ahead.
But if you're a team that by week 11, 12, you will be potentially competing for a national championship, why risk it all when your freshman quarterback that's never played a game in his life has to ease into it, but now he's thrown into playing Alabama week 1? Maybe it's soft, but listen, we're talking about bigger things at stake here. And if it's a potential national championship, I don't know, give me an Akron first. On the flip side of that, it is so much fun getting Oregon week 1 or 2 or Notre Dame and having to prepare for that and saying, hey, if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. Let's go and fight it out. I don't know. I'm split. We're Ohio State. We should get some cupcakes.
No, I disagree with you. We're Ohio State. We should play some damn good teams and make, all the people that are paying, for advertisements during that game, all the people that are paying to go for that game, all the people that are surrounding their Saturday to watch that game, not have to watch a 75-point blowout to the Akron Zips.
And I will tell you, I know it sucks because those games are cheaper, but if you're planning to go to a game, do not pick one of those games. I've been to those games. I wouldn't say it's boring, but the atmosphere compared to like a Big Ten matchup is nothing. But what you're forgetting, Noah, when you say that, I get what you're saying, but we do have the gauntlet that is the Big Ten after that. We have to play schools like Penn State, Michigan State in former years, Michigan, Wisconsin. These are programs that are all, they can be top 20, top 25 programs. We got to play them in our own conference. The conference has gotten so tough. Now add in USC, add in Oregon, add in Washington. We've already got a tough conference schedule. Why are we making it even harder on ourselves? Now, that is all to be said when it was a 4-team playoff and or when it was you need to be number 1 or number 2 to play for a national championship. Now that it's expanded, yeah, you virtually get in, no matter what. I mean, if you're in the power conferences, you have to really screw up not to make the playoff field. But there is something to be said to easing your way in and getting that new team to gel before taking on some of those huge schools.
So I kind of disagree.
Do it in camp. I'm sorry, John. I'm not trying to cut you off, but I just adamantly disagree. Do it in camp.
You don't play real football in camp.
It
never prepares you. That's just fact. Real game is what prepares you.
But they don't, the Browns don't get to come out every year and say, can we please play like the Jacksonville Jaguars from 7 years
and then
ago.
The Carolina Panthers, and then the XFL Defenders, and then we'll play the Steelers and the Bengals and the.
Are we talking about the?
And they don't do it in high school either. Like St. Ed starts the year every year playing one of the top 20 teams in the country out of state from Virginia or Texas.
Exactly.
I'm with Noah on that. I'm not even sure who I disagree with, but I'm going to say the points that I disagree with because it's a little bit of most of you. I think this time it's mostly Erik, though. Noah, I'm with you on almost everything you said. The only thing that I don't think you said up until October, you just watched the first half. There are a couple of games that are close unnecessarily. You guys are both big on tradition. We always talk about NIL and how bit you guys think it's wrecking the game a little bit. I think it's good, but if you like tradition,
think it's wrecking the game. I think it's fantastic.
Oh, okay, good. But the traditional aspect, let's keep the dollars in the state of Ohio. The other thing we're missing is that these kids who play for these other programs get a chance to play on the biggest stage. First reason, you're exactly right. Akron gets paid millions of dollars to play at Ohio State. But two, let's say we have the game at Akron where the Rubber Bowl seats 30,000 people. It's a game in Ohio, and they can't fit everybody who wants to go. So you're going to make more money playing at Ohio State with 100,000 people. Plus the kids. If you play at Akron, the nicest stadium you play in the MAC is like at home in Akron, and then you're Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan, Miami of Ohio. Not shitholes, but like ask the kids, ask the 19 and 20-year-olds, do you want to play another home game or do you want to go play in the shoe against the Buckeyes? I'd be willing to bet they want to take the road game too. Erik, to your point, I don't think we're risking anything early. You're not risking it all. A loss doesn't do anything. The Buckeyes have lost it. We went on the road and lost to Virginia Tech, who was unranked and won a national championship the same season. You can win a championship losing early, and the better the team you play, the less significant the loss is. Now, some of this is on the schools. Ohio State and the Big Ten have been like, we'll take our show on the road ready to play. And for a long time, the SEC was like, we're good just being the SEC. If I can beat Alabama or LSU or Ole Miss or Tennessee or Florida or Georgia, that's good enough for the conference schedule. I don't want to go play in East Lansing in the snow when I'm used to 80 degrees and sun. But the other thing is, man, there's upsets. My first Buckeyes game was Ohio State at home, ranked number 1 versus Illinois.
Oh, I was at that game too.
Juice Williams and Rashad Mendenhall carved us up, and we
unbelievable.
Lost. Illinois is no worse or better than Akron in an average season. So
where were you, by the way? I was in the one end zone.
I was in the student section in the end zone, and then my girlfriend's brother at the time, brother-in-law now, had some seats in like A deck. So at halftime we swapped.
No kidding. We were probably like 50 feet apart. That's wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But the last point I want to make on this, even if everything you guys were saying was right up until last year, not you guys, there's mostly Erik. I would pick on the right guy here. Okay. With 12 teams in the playoffs, it just doesn't matter. And you're going to get,
thank you.
You're going to get, what you're going to get is a conference schedule that's going to look like AFC, NFC, and the NFL. The SEC is going to play 12 SEC games. The Big Ten is going to play 12 Big Ten teams. You're going to have 6 of each in the playoff in 5 years, but we just got to get there. We got 1 foot still stuck in the BCS. Only 2 teams are going to make it. So play the cupcakes. Fast forward not even a full decade, and now we have a 12-team playoff, 2 super conferences. You make agreements to play these teams decades in advance. Like I remember I was in college when they said Ohio State's going to play USC at their place and our place, and Texas at their place and our place, and then Oklahoma at their place and our place, and then Colorado, and then Notre Dame. And it's like,
thanks, Tim.
Yeah, we're scheduled out till 2032. You can't just cancel the games in a lot of cases. Either you got to play the schedule the way it is.
Listen,
they'll fix it.
I'm all for a tough schedule if the other teams, the LSUs, the Alabamas, they got to have a tough schedule too. That's the thing.
The argument, though, is switching it so it's all.
But who decides these schedules now?
That's.
I think it's up to the committee. Honestly, I don't care if Ohio State,
because they've never gotten it wrong.
With 12 teams, if you have an Ohio State team that's played Washington and Michigan and Penn State and USC, and you have and Notre Dame, and then you have an Alabama team that coasted and played a bunch of cupcakes with one loss, they're going to say the Buckeyes' 2 losses to really good teams are just as valid as this undefeated SEC team who decided to play nobody.
You're right, John, but again, who's deciding the regular season schedule? That's what we're talking about, not the playoff.
Right, but there's a governing body of all of this called the NCAA for a reason.
And again, they've never gotten it wrong.
I agree. I mean, the NFL doesn't get everything
basically
right.
For some tattoos, and Michigan still has their natty.
I agree
that's
with
the problem. There needs to be a process in place to pick these games then.
All right, let's do devil's advocate then, because I'm on board with Noah. So, Eric, you're the commissioner of the NCAA. You can wipe the slate clean and start over.
Michigan's gone forever. Go on.
How do you fix it? Like you're saying, oh, they've never gotten it wrong. They've never got. Well, everybody's going to get it wrong at some point. Like if perfection is what you're holding them to, I agree they're not perfect, but like you look at the college football schedule this season and go, well, this sucks. It's stupid. It doesn't make sense. Like I think they did a pretty good job with what they were given.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we take all of the power teams, so your Ohio States, your Alabamas of the world, they'll be in these kind of groups, almost like how you group soccer standings, like in UEFA, and then you'll draw randomly. So you could put all the other teams in buckets and say for the non-conference games, you draw. So we could get USC or we could get whoever, and it's completely randomized.
I'm fine with that.
I think it screws up the postseason though. Like you take a group of people and you say, okay, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Penn State, Michigan, Washington, and Texas and Oklahoma are all going to play each other in the regular season. Okay, great. But aren't we going to do that again at the end of the season in the tournament anyway?
Then what's your argument? You want tougher games.
I don't want tougher games. I think they have it good now. You want tougher games, I thought.
No, Noah wants tougher games. You've been disagreeing with the wrong person.
You were on my side. You want a tougher schedule, I thought.
You do.
I don't have a problem with the tougher schedule. I thought Eric's argument was if we make it tough, you're risking it all early, and we're playing a freshman in front of a big light, and I don't know how he's going to react. And I'm like, that's bullshit. You play college football at Ohio State, get out there and play. If you don't like the big light, go play at Texas Western. Like I don't know.
But you also don't want them to play Alabama.
I
don't know John's point at this take.
I'm so lost at this point.
His take at this point.
All right, so maybe that's why I think it's good the way it is. We have 2 super conferences. Our conference games are going to be tough. We have a big, wide country of teams to pick from. We'll get our Washingtons, Penn States, and all this shit in, and we can also play Akron and Marshall whenever to keep money in state, give the kids a shot.
I want tougher schedules because it's all fine and dandy that we can give these kids a shot. But I, as a former football player, would not want to go and lose 75 points on the road when I could be playing games.
I call bullshit on that. You don't want to go play at the shoe against The Ohio State University.
You're get my ass whooped? For what?
You are full of it.
For what?
I don't believe that for a second. To say that you played in the shoe against the eventual national champions, that's what.
Yeah.
And got my ass whooped by 75. That does nothing for me.
I got to block the number 1 offensive lineman in the country who went on to play for probably the Steelers because they always draft Buckeyes. You don't want to say that?
No, I don't
care. Instead, you want to go get your ass beat to some nobody school?
Well, you don't know if you're getting your ass beat then. You're not a Power 5 school.
That's a wild take, Noah.
That's not a wild take. How is that a wild take?
John, back me up. That's wild.
Yeah, if I I mean, to put it in similar terms, if somebody was like, John, you were playing second base at Baldwin Wallace and you guys could go play the University of Arizona in Omaha at the World Series Stadium, I don't care if I lose 50-0, I'm taking that game.
That's
every
crazy.
time.
And
Noah, the other thing you forget is there's 100 plays on each side of the ball in a game. Somebody's going to make one. You could be the guy who gets loose and gets the sack. You could be the guy who scoops and scores the fumble.
Exactly.
I know your friend.
Imagine that highlight reel. All right, let me put it differently. Noah, you have the chance to play me one-on-one and potentially beat me. Probably not, but potentially beat me. Or you can play LeBron James, who's going to kick your ass. You're picking me, buddy?
Different.
It's the same idea.
Different. It's the same thing.
Not.
If right now you were like, I got to play against Dwayne Haskins in college, nobody's going to go, how much did you lose by? They're going to be like, that's dope. You played against the Buckeyes at the shoe? That's the story. That's
100%.
I disagree. I'd rather go 12-0, win the MAC, and get a nice bowl game. That's just me, I guess.
Did you do that at
No,
Worcester?
we were perennially 6-4.
Then what's your argument? You weren't doing that anyway.
That's the goal, though. Why would I willingly?
You can still win the MAC if you lose to that Ohio State team.
Why would I willingly go forward, put myself on the line, lose a game that we're gonna lose no matter what when it could count towards something, instead of just being a number in the loss column like that automatically? Cool. The school gets $4 million in their pocket. They've been getting millions of dollars in their pocket for years anyway. What do I care as the athlete?
But no, the point is this. You said you guys were perennially mediocre.
Yeah.
You guys would put a loss in the loss column every year at Walsh. So why not exchange Walsh for Ohio State and have the experience?
Well, Walsh is D2. I wouldn't want to play them either.
Thank you for shouting out my alma mater there. Because we kicked your ass every year.
Yeah, you probably would have. 100%. You guys had scholarships. We were just there for vibes and friendship. Regardless.
Vibes and friendships. And the beer. Don't forget the beer.
Well, I wasn't a frat. That we don't talk about that as much on this show because it's sports oriented. But yes, we were there.
You can't have a Scottishman in a kilt and act like you didn't drink in college. If that's your logo, you did some drinking of something.
Our logo isn't a Scottish man in the kilt anymore. It's a dog.
They screwed the pooch on that one. You know what? I don't agree with you, Noah, but I respect your take. I think it's a wild take, but I respect it.
I do too. I was just going to say, I'm not going to tell you how you'd feel, but if I were you, I'd want to play at Ohio State.
I wouldn't. I'd rather go play another D3 school, get another win on the win column, and maybe get a bid into the.
So here's this is the crux of the argument for me. If you played at Mount Union D3 and y'all were winning national championships every year, I'm like, dope, get it, 100%. Do what you do. He said you were 6-4, and my offer is exchange one of those 4 losses to whoever you played to a loss to Ohio State at the shoe in September. That seems like a fun experience, but whatever.
No, and I'm going to leave it at this so we could go into our last topic. But, I love shouting out this fun fact because I would not want to play Ohio State at the shoe because the last Ohio-based team to not lose to Ohio State, not lose is the key word here, are the Worcester Fighting Scots in 1928. They tied them.
See, that's
Sandy
amazing.
Koufax was pitching well then. He said we couldn't use him because it's ancient. So,
Can I just throw one more thing out?
Go ahead.
Your Worcester Fighting Scots in the 2022-2023 football season, your losses were Wabash, DePaul, Ohio Wesleyan,
OWU,
and Denison.
Yeah.
You're not swapping one of those for Ohio State?
That was all conference play. I couldn't anyway. And no, I wouldn't regardless.
I mean, you guys put up some points that year, though. 56 points against Oberlin. They must be terrible.
I would give up one college game to practice at the shoe.
Oberlin was terrible because I got some PT that game. That's all I'm going to say. Gentlemen, let's move
1950,
forward.
You went 1-6-1. I wonder if one of those were the Buckeyes.
No, it was like before that. It was like the 20s, I think, is the last time. It was when the Buckeyes were still in the Ohio Athletic Conference.
Yeah,
so that should tell you something. Gentlemen, we got off gear. I love it, though. let's rein it back in a little bit. I want to bring up the final topic of the day. Should all levels of football adapt to the rules of the NFL? This is very open-ended, but I was thinking about, the new kickoff rule was kind of what transpired this in my head, because obviously college, high school are still using the traditional kickoff system. Something else I kind of wanted to throw in there too is that the NFL and the NFLPA comes out with the helmet rankings every year for what helmets you should basically be wearing and not wearing in terms of football. And most schools do go ahead and follow that. Granted, the top 4 helmets on there are all Vices, and those are like $1,000 helmets that only, your St. Ed's and St. Ignatius's could probably afford. But I want to know your thoughts. I started one. John started one. Eric, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Super quick. Point of clarification so we answer the same question. Is this
Okay.
like the pictures where we said all time, but really meant the last 20 years? Do you really mean all levels of football? Like, do we want Pop Warner kids playing NFL rules?
Okay, cut it at high school. We don't have to go all the way down to Pop Warner. I know that's different. I'm a football guy. I don't think you should play football until like 5th or 6th grade.
Okay.
I don't think it makes sense to play football before that. I would never tell my kid no, but that's my own personal opinion. Go ahead, Eric. Open us up.
All right.
So should all levels of football adopt the NFL rules? And by all levels, we basically mean high school and football. The answer is a resounding no. Are you nuts? First of all, part of what makes football fun is the difference in rules at different levels. And that's particularly true when we're talking about college football, because if not for how the NCAA has progressed the game, we might still have shitty overtime rules. We might still have the push out rule. Remember that? That was one of the worst rules of all time. He would have landed in bounds, so he's getting the catch. The NFL has had terrible rules over the years, and if not for an organization pushing them to be better, they might still have those rules. Every organization on the planet needs competition to fuel innovation. Microsoft and Apple probably aren't where they are today if they hadn't been prodding one another to be better and pushing one another along. And I think the same goes for the NFL and college football, because that's really what we're talking about. I know you said high school, but it's really the NFL and college football. Should there be a standard by which rules as far as safety is concerned? Probably. I'm okay with that if we're talking about keeping and making the game safer. If we're trying to limit, obviously we had a conversation on CTE a couple episodes back. If we're doing everything we can to mitigate those things, yes, I think that's a good idea. But I think having one entity from which the rules flow is a bad idea, and you're going to stall innovation at that point, which is necessary to continue to grow the game and make the game better.
John, go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say before I chip in.
I agree with Eric. No chance. Especially at high school. I don't think college either. I know people view college as the free farm league for the NFL, and it is, but it doesn't mean you make the rules the same. There are a few specifics that come to mind, but the college game is enjoyable because we're acknowledging the fact that we can't have the talent across 150 NCAA teams and still put a good product on the field as we can in the NFL when we only have 32 and we're paying millions of dollars. I always make the argument that at any given time, there's only 20 quarterbacks on earth qualified to play in the NFL, and we have 32 teams, so people are going to be screwed anyway. Let's not make it worse by putting pro expectations and pro rules in college. Stuff that you don't think about a lot that makes a huge difference is stuff like 1 foot versus 2 feet in for a catch. I like that we hold the pros to a higher standard. That second toe drag. I mean, how many college football games do we watch where it's like, oh yeah, good news, 1 foot? Like, I think it would meaningfully change the game for the worse because you're putting a higher degree of specificity and skill into the game at college when the players aren't as good. I also think that if anything, now I'm not advocating for this, but if anything, I would rather see them take more college rules and put them in pro than the other way around. The 1 foot down in the NFL can make things interesting and spice up the offense. The other thing is, can you imagine with a quarterback who's an NFL caliber quarterback, and the hash marks divide the field into thirds instead of just the width of the goalpost at 6 yards in the middle of the field, the wide side of the field in the NFL would be the Wild West, dude. It would be, everybody would look like Tyreek Hill. Not advocating for that either, but if anything, I think they should loosen it up a little bit in the NFL to make the game even more free-flowing and to score more points. But no way, shape, or form do I think they should have the same rules in college as pro.
Yeah, so I mostly agree with you guys. I think it's more of a yes and no question for me. Yes, I think things that make the game safer, such as potentially the new kickoff rule, potentially the helmet thing. My argument was going to be, well, we talk about, does the NFL always have players' best interests in mind? When you look at the study for the helmets, for example, it's the NFLPA and the NFL that come together to do this. It's a co-branded thing with a bunch of research involved. So yes, I do think high schools and colleges should be following what helmets to use. I think they should be adopting rules that, the NFL might set that precedent, right, to make the game more safer. I think you will see this, if this kickoff rule that we are doing this year sticks and makes the game safer and more exciting, like it is, projected to be from what we've seen with the UFL. I think you will see that go down. think you'll see that trickle down a lot. But yes, I agree, John, with your take as well. When you think of the 1 foot versus the 2 foot, we're not talking about Tyreek Hill. We're talking about some 2-star prospect that is going to get his accounting degree and go be an accountant, which is great life, but he's not Tyreek Hill, right?
Right.
So I do agree with that thought process as well. If anything, who I think the main precedent setter should be out of any of this? The NCAA. I think the NCAA should be setting this precedent for high school. I think high schools should follow closely to what's going on with NCAA, because NCAA, follows the same rules, whether that be D1, D2, D3, sub D1 for football, because there's 2 levels to D1 when it comes to football. I think the NCAA should be setting it for these high school kids too. Granted, the governing bodies like the Ohio High School Athletic Association would have to approve this, because it's prepping you for that next level almost, right? If you're going to go play at a D3, playing in those rules where the clock stops how the clock stops, maybe there is a 2-minute warning involved because that is a college rule now. I don't know. Those are just some of the things that I think that I'd like to see it be adapted to the high school game. But then you also start thinking about these smaller schools that maybe don't have a kicker. So how do you, I don't know.
They probably don't have a good clock operator to do some of that stuff too, frankly. I mean, if you think about, think about the small, where I went to high school was tiny. They couldn't facilitate some of that stuff. The clock's going to be running even though he went out of bounds, but yeah.
There's other stuff too that's stupid that we didn't talk about. And I know it's not the spirit of the question, but like, nobody wants to go to a high school football game and have a 2-minute warning. Like, there's also stuff that's just idiotic. I will say though, I was making the point before about college impacting the program. I think it's going to keep going that way. 2 recent examples. One, I forgot. I have to come back to it. But 2, wait, the overtime rule. I know the NFL could still end in a tie, but each team gets a chance. I think we're going to head to a spot in the NFL where games can't end in a tie before too long. The other one that doesn't at all impact on-field play, but it's just kind of fun for sports junkies and people into uniforms like us. Long overdue that you can wear whatever number you want regardless of position. How dope is it that JOK is just number 6 as a linebacker? Like, why did it take so long to do that?
I agree to an extent.
That wears 33, the quarterback. Like, that just looks so weird.
That's what I was going to say. I agree to an extent. I don't want to see offensive linemen wearing number 1. No, you wear 50 through 79 because that's a lot of numbers for offensive and defense. Well, not all defensive linemen. I think there can be some transparency. I think JOK should be able to wear 6. Why not? He's an anchor of the team. He should have one of the cooler numbers on the field. Cooler numbers.
I love it. I love a big fat lineman at LSU who's 380 pounds and 6'6", wearing number 11. Like, I just think it's great.
So I'm just not used to it. I can't get used to it.
Yeah,
maybe it's the old head in me, and maybe it's the, I wore one of the, like, I was 77 from literally 6th grade through graduation of college. So
you keep wearing it. Nobody's saying you gotta change, but if you rather be 7 and your only option was 77, you could change it. I think that's good.
Yeah, I don't know. I also don't like the 33 as a quarterback thing. I think
It looks so weird.
It looks
It's
so weird.
Devin Brown, right? Isn't he 33?
Yes. Gentlemen, I have enjoyed this episode. I want to go into final thoughts and takes as we come up on the hour mark. What are we thinking? Final thoughts and takes. Erik, take us away.
Yeah, so I'm kind of going off last night. We won't talk about today, but the Yankees are like the Republican Party of the past in that they are done. They're cooked. Steinbrenner's passing, it doused the flame that was the relentless pursuit to be champions, because they're just not that. They're a hollow shell of what they once were, despite still spending an absolute fortune on players, and why the passion just isn't there anymore. You can see it in the team. They don't have that Mamba in them at all. That fire, like, guys like Jeter had. And until they get somebody that does have that, they're not going to win another championship.
John, grab it for me, man.
John opens DraftKings, places $1,000 bet on Yankees to win the World Series this year.
Best of luck.
Just because Erik
I'll give you that bet right now.
No, I do not want it. Not for 1,000. I don't know. The Yankees are playing good ball.
We have a few outstanding bets before we add any more.
Yeah, we got some half-court shots to take and some putting to do.
I'm ready to go. You guys are the ones that are busy on the weekends, Mr. I have a family and Mr. I like to go home sometimes.
Let's do it. I'm golfing Sunday.
I have zero plans Sunday. No, I have plans. Never mind. John, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Guy.
My hot take, it's not super hot, but it's lukewarm. It's gonna warm up as the season gets here. I think the Browns have the best roster in the NFL outside of quarterback, with the lone potential argument being San Francisco. I think we have everything in place to be great, and I think that this is a do or die year, or they're going to have to start thinking about blowing it up or restructuring contracts and doing all kinds of wild stuff that we don't want to talk about. I am nervous about Deshaun. There's this foregone conclusion when I talk to Browns fans that, well, we got everything and Deshaun's going to be healthy. And I'm like, okay, he had a decent starting record last year. I think he led the Baltimore charge late there. I'm not saying the guy's a bum. But I am not sold, and I don't know what we're going to get. And when people ask how many wins you got the Browns down for, this is one of the hardest years to do it. If you said the Browns were going to win
17 personally.
17. Wow. Did you see Did you see today's news, John?
No, but if you said the Browns were going to win 6 and you said the Browns were going to win 16, I could see a path to both, and I just don't know what to make of it. What happened today?
Watson's arm was sore. He had soreness in the arm and was pulled from. Let me ask you this though: not that there's a lot of faith, but in some of the games where Huntley came in for Lamar, he seemed like a clone of Lamar. And with our offense, do you think Huntley could carry us forward?
No. I mean, listen to the question out loud. Like, I get where it's coming from, but listen to the question.
Jameis eating W's.
This is a Super Bowl. This is an AFC Championship or bust season probably for the Browns, right? At least for expectations. Can Huntley take us there? Like, no.
But at this point, we got to ask, can Watson?
I don't know.
That's what I'm trying to say. Realistic?
And the thing that pisses me off most
about I want to jump in here. I'm jumping in here real quick. Kevin Stefanski himself pulled Deshaun Watson today. It was a precautionary thing because he has practiced in every practice since the start of camp. When typically I know we don't like to call him the franchise quarterback or whatever because of what's going on. He hasn't lived up to his contract, whatever. Typically you get a couple rest days here and there. He has not done any of that. I think it was more so Deshaun was like, yeah, my arm's a little sore today. And Kevin was like, nope, we want to see you play on Saturday and we're not going to chance a single thing. This team has been so cautious this preseason that we all need to relax. That's
I hope
my
that's
hot
true.
take.
And I will say that Cleveland sports media, apart from yours truly, with the three of us, are some of the worst in the country. They're negative. I mean, when we had LeBron and the team that was going to the finals no matter what, it is some of the most negative reporting I've ever seen of any team. There is some of that, I think, buy-in, but I think there's a lot of just built up, like John said, it's do or die, baby. It's time to go. And if we don't, yeah, we have to have uncomfortable conversations. I think a lot of that hesitancy is from that. And exactly what you're saying, John, I agree too. I don't know where, I think at one point we went through each what we think wins and losses, but it could go any way. I mean, Pittsburgh made some really good moves. They scare me. Joe Burrow's healthy again.
Did you see
But
Russell Wilson's first preseason game?
Well, to be fair,
No.
they look
We're
trash.
not gonna do that.
It Fields look trash too. But
right.
my
Okay.
point is, the North is such a gauntlet. Anything can happen. We could completely miss the playoffs. We could have a losing record. You just never know.
The point of my hot take, to just wrap that whole thing up and put a bow on it, is this: I think the Browns were scared, and I think they missed an opportunity, because I do think, while I don't think it's Huntley, I think a backup quarterback who's solid could get us there, even if Watson is out. And I think the most famous person and the most popular person in Cleveland is the backup quarterback. And the front office said, if we have Joe Flacco and Russ Wilson on this roster, as soon as Deshaun screws up, the fans are going to be chanting for the backup, and we don't want to deal with that. So we put all our eggs in the Deshaun basket, and if he either doesn't play well or gets hurt, that's it. I don't want to hear shit about Jameis Winston. He's not good. I know it.
Okay, hold on, though, because, in defense of the Browns a little bit, I agree with you slightly, but you do want to have backup quarterbacks that are more in the mold of your starter. Like Flacco and Watson play two completely separate games.
Not if they're bums.
Not if what?
Not if they're bums. You don't want backups that are in the same, let's just go get PJ again because, he's black and quick. So he looks like Deshaun. Let's put him in there.
I get what you're saying. If I had to choose a quarterback this year, my choice might be Baker Mayfield. I think he might have been able to lead us somewhere, but we made that trade-off. So
you guys are going way off, because I also we can table this conversation, because I think this could be a great one for next week, because we do need some new topics for next week. And I want to talk some Browns with you boys after this. John, I'm going to silence you. You look like you want to say something. No? Okay, cool.
Damn.
I'm going to wrap this thing up so we can get out of here. We can talk Browns next week. This is a hard teaser because I already have the question in mind, because I know I'm going to get flack from the two old heads. Tim wants us to keep going. I want to shout out David Burns watching from Cedar Hill, Texas as well. Real quick, gentlemen, any last words that you want to say?
Yeah, I would like to hear your hot take, because we never got it.
I said my hot take is that everyone needs to relax. I just built it into John's because we started going.
Terrible. Okay, sorry.
Do you want my let me think of another hot take. Do you want a better hot take?
No, I'm going to mute your mic. We got to get out of here, but we'll tee it up next week.
And on that note,
thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the East Bank Sports Show at the office. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. 99% of you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel. Helps us grow the channel a bunch. Cleveland, until next time, have a great rest of your week.